And this is your Ichimoku Cloud update for Monday, October the 18th. And what we're looking at here is the Dow Jones Industrial Average using the 240-minute cloud. I use eSignal, so I have my own time frames up here, all the different clouds, and this is the 240-minute cloud. The reason I like the 240 on so many different stocks, ETFs, indices, is because it creates such a nice distance on a nice trend from the cloud going up this way. It can hug the trend for such a long time. If we look at the daily chart, you'll see that it can get often very sharply up. The cloud is projected a lot forward. Even though the same calculations are used, the moves are much sharper. Whereas for swing trading, I really like the 240-minute cloud. Here's gold, for example, on the 240 cloud. Using GLD, we can look back here to just after the beginning of August at 117, breaking through this negative cloud, which it held for about a month. Moves up, and it basically hugs it the same amount the whole time. So for swing trading, you can just be a 240-minute cloud trader if you want to be, and just say when it's on the side of the cloud I want, I'm holding until it crosses the cloud. Simple as that. And you'd be in from 117 on GLD all the way up to the 130 level. Here it's getting pretty shaky. I would expect perhaps a little bit of downside here, but holding the cloud, that would give all the way down to about 130 using GLD. The price is a little bit different than the actual gold spot futures, but GLD tracks it very closely. So going back here to SPY on the 240-minute cloud, it's basically the same type of thing as opposed to the daily. I really like the 240. It's one of my favorite time frames. Looking here, this is IYG, the iShares Dow Jones US Financial Index, also on the 240 cloud. You can see that it broke the cloud here. This isn't necessarily a reason to short it. Right now, it's just something that I don't like. I mean, it breaks through, touches the cloud, breaks down here. It's just not somewhere where I want to be in IYG on the financials really at all. That includes the banks. Here are the home builders using the ETF XHB. They are above the cloud, barely hanging on here. That was on the 240-minute cloud. This is now the daily. And look at how well the cloud works back here when it broke this one. You know, back here last year, stays below here for May, June, July, August, September. Finally breaks through again here. You could miss all this turmoil just by trading the cloud. Typically what I've seen in a situation like this on the daily clouds is when you do get a nice move through here, you'll almost, well, I don't know about always, but very, very often, you'll come down and you'll touch this cloud here again. So the home builders down to 15 would be an easy move. It's just not something with a lot of relative strength right now. It's not really a good trend. It's really pretty speculative. So it's not something, you know, that I necessarily want to trade. I want to go with more clear trends, more stronger trends than on the home builders. I talked about metals in the daily commentary as well. This is Barrick Gold, one of the biggest gold mining companies. I want to go all the way back here to 2008 at this peak at 54. We had the huge move down, of course, when everything was going down. And now we are here, 47.99. When you start to approach these peaks from back here, it's not really technically resistance on the chart, but you can look back at these previous time frames and they do make a difference. So looking at the weekly chart here, it's still above the cloud, could easily fall down to 43. Weekly is not a chart that I typically use unless I want to look way back. But if I look at the daily chart here, there's some weakening here as it approaches this Tenkan line. And when I look at the 240, it's also broken both these lines here. And it's a bit more jaggedy. You can see going here, touches, breaks it, sort of breaks it a bit again. It's just a lot more jaggedy than if I was to look at gold on the 240. That was just the 240 of ABX. Much, much, much more beautiful trend. And typically if you look back at history, you can often do better in just the metals themselves than the metal mining companies, because looking at something now, it can take years to get a new mine going, while all the while the metal price goes up, and that's the reason they're doing the financing for the new mines in the first place. So I think at a stage, late in a bull market or in the medium phase of a bull market that can last, up to 20 years. A lot of major commodity trends can last 20 years, and it's already almost 10 years since this has been going on now. You can get the price of the commodity moving ahead of the price of the underlying stocks that deal with those types of commodities. I wanted to touch briefly on the long bond, the TLT. This is the 20 plus year bond. It was back in here that we got some call options a few months ago on the TLT. And this is using the 240 minute cloud. You can see it breaks it to the bottom, breaks it to the top, breaks it to the bottom again. It's really not necessarily somewhere to be right now. If I look at the daily, it also broke the daily. So say for example you were only a daily trader, which is really quite long term. They can last over a year, some of the trends on the daily chart. Looking back here in May, let's go back to how long the TLT was below the cloud. Way back here in November of a few years ago, stays down here, November 2009, all the way until late April 2010. Breaks to the upside, price is about 90.91, and look at how it moves from when it breaks through this cloud. Quite jaggedy, comes down here, touches, moves higher, but now it's trading below the cloud. There's no reason to be on TLT at all. If you were a cloud only trader, you'd be in about 90.91, out at about 102, 103. But for right now, it's just a speculative daily type of trade, the TLT, looking at the 60. As soon as it breaks the 60 over here, falls right off a cliff. So it's not somewhere that I want to be in TLT, because when people get really bullish on stocks, they're not necessarily going to be bullish on the bonds. But if things really turn around in the market, you could get a move up in TLT, but it could just be a speculative move, because I like to have those nice trends like we saw on GLD. Just looking back here real quick on the 240 minute cloud. These are the nice types of trends that I'm looking for. Even though we did take profits recently on the double gold long DGP, that was because of this shaky action here, and it was a double long, and we got in a little bit late on that gold move on DGP, so I just wanted to take some profits last week. And that is your Ichimoku Cloud update for October 18th, 2010.